So the GM said he was done with running D&D and told the players that he was going to run something different next week, and all the players were too lazy to read a new damn book, so everyone quit. Session's canceled. Christ. Welcome back. That's not a call out to anyone specific, but if it feels like a call out and the shoe fits, you do with that information what you will.
There's all the people who like switched over the Pathfinder right now. They're like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. I kind of forgot about the big D&D Exodus. Yeah, I didn't even. Yeah. You know, actually, funny story. The big D&D Exodus. Yep. Even though I was already, not like I was already like in my brain. I was like, when my current campaign's over, I'm done with 5e. That was already in my train of thought. But when everyone else was like, LOL, fuck 5e, my brain went, yeah, wait a minute, fuck 5e, a little extra. Which is kind of the reason I was like...
my man jumped on the hype train, goddamn.
I was already on the train, but then I doubled down on the train, which is kind of the reason I started looking at any books and other games anyway, just kind of for funsies. Just to be like, LOL, fuck 5e, I guess.
All right, real shit.
Anyway, it's such hello, we're back. I'm Josh. Matt is here.
Hey.
Isaiah is here.
I also hear you.
Sam has no internet right now, so he's not here because somebody really hates Sam. I'm convinced he wronged an evil wizard at some point and is just cursed perpetually.
Yeah, look, I mean, the master of manipulation has his fingers in Sam quite deeply. If it isn't Papa Nergies, it's Pimp Daddy Zinch.
It's somebody. You were gonna say Isaiah?
Oh, it's funny because we were talking like, we know me and Matt know what the topic for today is. And I literally went, not as like I gotta like act like I read more systems, but I sat there being like, see, I could prepare for session or I could look into City of Mist because I kind of want to play.
Yeah, I mean, right? Okay. See, that's kind of all right. Let me give the impetus for why I even had this thought because I haven't explained it. To those viewers, to those listening, you've probably surmised from the title of some sort, which we haven't decided yet, but I'm going to guess once the title will inform you in some fashion. We're going to be talking about learning and or picking up new systems, which is to say learning something other than 5e. Not necessarily. 5e could be a new system for you, so that's not actually a true case. I just, I had to get that in there. And the reason that this came to my mind, as I said, the OGL debacle, chaos, D&D 5e exodus that occurred was part of it. But it was also just kind of because I was trying to figure out what the next game I wanted to run is. And I've had an idea for what I want my next campaign to be for a while, but I didn't know what system I wanted to use. So I've been on the hunt for a system in question. So I recently picked up Worlds Without Number and started reading through that, and strong possibility that'll be the winning system, but not guaranteed, but strong possibility. In my impetus not my impetus, what the fuck was that sentence?
I don't know, but
I don't know either. But I was sort of jaunting through Worlds Without Number. I also started listening to a new actual play, which was Cyberpunk Red. And then because I'm the kind of person who, when I listen to an actual play, I want to know what the rules of the game they're playing are, so I can know if they get it wrong, so I can get mad while I'm listening. Don't ask me why I do this, but this is a thing I do. So I'm listening to a Cyberpunk Red actual play, so naturally I started reading Cyberpunk Red. I picked that up and was like, well, I have to know what the rules are now. Because I'm a psychopath, I guess.
Well, so you know what's funny, right?
Huh?
A part of me wishes I could go back to before I learned 5e.
Uh-huh.
So that every 5e actual play I watch, I don't like critique.
Yep.
Because I do that now. Like that's a big thing with crit roll where I'm like, that doesn't make. You know what? Never mind. I'm not even gonna. I have to keep doing it. I'm like, wait, that's not how that works. You know what? Never mind. Because if I got annoyed for every house rule that then I'm like, I can't have house rules. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I can't.
Correct.
How come they get to break the rules, but I want to break the rules? So you're like, no, stop. But I do catch myself a lot.
It's to give you a literal actual example of that, Isaiah. I started listening to a new D&D actual play that just recently started. And they were like, I don't know, it was maybe session 3 or whatever. And I noticed that the Turtle Barbarian character had an AC of 20. And I looked at that and I went, there's no conceivable way for this character to have an AC of 20. It's impossible.
Did they have a shield?
No, but also I could see their stats. And I did the math and I was like, their AC should be 16 or something. But
so usually
they're a turtle.
Turtles have
right. So they're a turtle, so it defaults to 17, which I knew. So I was like, okay, so their AC should be 17. Why is it 20? I don't understand. And this bothered me so much, I left a comment on the YouTube video, like a sociopath. I really shouldn't have. I should have just ignored it.
Never comment. Never comment. You already lost.
But here's the thing: the reason I did it is because. All right, Isaiah, this isn't a call out, but it's gonna feel like a call out. The reason I did it is because of your character in my game.
LOL, Lamau.
Because your character's ridiculously high AC has driven me mad quite a few times, and seeing a turtle barbarian with 20 AC, I immediately looked at that and went, "Oh, GM, you're gonna have a bad time."
Turtles are so good. Turtle barbarians are so good.
Yeah, I was like, you shouldn't have done that, because not only are they taking the half damage, they're also going to be really hard to hit. So I left a comment being like, hey, their AC should be 17. At which point the GM responded to me in the comments. Now she didn't like flame me or anything. She gave me a very reasonable response. And she basically was like, yeah, I didn't find any clear rules on how the two different types of AC stack or would stack or should work together. And it doesn't make any sense that a turtle barbarian and a turtle sorcerer would have the same AC to me. So I let him add his constitution modifier to his turtle AC. So he was doing 17 plus 3. Because his con was plus 3.
Jesus, all right. That's going to be a thick boy.
So the funny thing is, too, the player in question is the least, like, it definitely didn't do it because of min-max reasons. It just happened that way. But, at which point I went, okay, you do you. If it's a house rule, that's fine. If you're curious, the way the AC rule technically works is you just take whichever number is the highest, and that's your AC. But you do you. That character's never gotten hit so far.
Oh.
So, whatever. So yes, Isaiah, I deeply understand your struggle. And yet, at the same time, I also, every time I listen to a new game, have a deep desire to know the rules of the new game so I can get mad if they get it wrong.
Is it just me? I have an easier time visualizing the actual play if I don't know the rules. Because I don't think about it mechanically. I just think about it like narratively. Like ever since I learned 5e, the magic is gone. I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
Give it back.
Yeah, that is very much a thing. And I don't know how to solve that problem, but yes, it's a thing. So that's why I was looking. So I was looking into Worlds Without Number. I was looking into Cyberpunk Red. And then also I was like, oh yeah, our Talsorian games who make Cyberpunk also made the Witcher RPG. So I started looking into the Witcher RPG. So for a minute there, I was bouncing between 3 different games I was looking into / learning.
Our relationship with the Witcher RPG has been an emotional roller coaster.
Isaiah,
for the last 2 weeks.
It has been. In case anyone's curious who's listening, my official take on the Witcher RPG is the guy who's sitting in his car eating like a Popeye's chicken, and he's just, it's all right.
It's all right.
That's my take on that game. Just in case you're curious, that's my official take on the Witcher RPG. It's the only way I could put it. It encompassed my feelings the best. Maybe, I'm not going to get into why I feel that way, because that would be entirely its own episode. But yeah, that's kind of my overall jive on that one. It's all right.
So funny.
There's some good, there's some bad, Yeah,
I mean, for pretty much in the last 2 weeks, it was the rock being like, it's the biggest pile of dog shit, and then it would switch to the fucking it would switch to the critical, like, woo!
Yeah, there was a minute there where I was like, oh, maybe this game's a lot better than I thought, and then I looked a little bit more and I was like, okay, it is better than I thought, but it's definitely got some issues.
I remember you specifically were like, I want to run a Witcher style game, but I don't know what system to use. And I'm like, why don't you just look up the actual Witcher one? I don't think so. Weeks later.
Well, here's the thing, Matt. I did look into it, and I'm not going to use it because it's not going to do what I want. I'm trying. Okay. small tangent on the Witcher RPG. I find it very weird that the Witcher RPG de-incentivizes and heavily pushes you away from combat. Anyone else find that weird?
Yeah, it was a little strange when you're like, you can die super easy. And you're like, well, then I'm not going to fight. What the fuck?
Yeah, the game de-incentivizes combat a lot. And I saw someone, because I made a Reddit post asking in the Witcher subreddit, in the Witcher tabletop subreddit, not the video game subreddit, being like, hey, here's some concerns I have about the game. What do y'all takes on these points I've noticed so far? And someone literally said to me, yeah, the Witcher tabletop game, and also, the Witcher franchise in general, isn't really about combat. At which point I was like, I'm not responding to this person, because we clearly are not interacting with the same franchise. Because, am I crazy? Is that not an insane statement to say the Witcher franchise isn't about fighting?
I mean,
that's a crazy statement, right?
Kind of. I see what he's saying, right? Like, because it's the series in of itself is like Geralt's struggle with the idea of good and evil.
Right, and there's a lot of like also political machinations and stuff, but all their problems are solved via violence.
Yeah, there's a lot of fighting monsters.
Like as someone who's read the book series, there's a lot of fucking combat.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big part. It's a big part of the whole fucking adventure.
Like the political machination stuff is in a lot of ways a backdrop for why all these people are fighting. I mean, like Nilfgaard is just an excuse for incredible amounts of violence. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And Worlds Without Number though, super good, big fan. In case y'all were curious. And Cyberpunk Red, pretty good too. There's a couple of parts of Cyberpunk Red where I'm like, but for the most part, I think Cyberpunk Red is pretty solid. And I think the Witcher RPG should have taken more lessons from Cyberpunk Red than it did.
Well, Cyberpunk Red was the one that came out last, so they probably, after making the Witcher one and updating it with a bunch of books and stuff, they probably, when they were going to make Cyberpunk Red, were like, all right, let's take everything we learned from The Witcher and do it better in Cyberpunk Red.
I would say that would be the case, except... So, the Witcher RPG was made by Cody Pondsmith, and the Cyberpunk game was made by his father, Mike. And I think they were being made in tandem, but it seems like they didn't communicate back and forth that much. I don't know. I'm sort of speculating here, but...
I mean, it could be that, or they just a different... They could have just disagreed on some design philosophy.
Something like that, yeah. Also, apparently, I saw someone mention that the Witcher RPG takes more stuff from Cyberpunk 2020, which is the older version. That makes sense. So it might have. But yeah,
Cyberpunk 2020 was the most popular version of Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
It's still. I mean, even now, people like switching over the Red. You have the people who are like, I'm not switching. I'm gonna keep 2020, and it's like, well, they have a fuck ton of rules to update from 2020 to Red pretty easily. Like it's, like again, just to compare like 5e, they're like, here's a bunch of like free PDFs to convert 4e or 3rd edition stuff to 5e. Those charts, not helpful, not great. Those fucking, they fucking almost useless. The Cyberpunk Red conversion from 2020, so easy, so good. Like it fucking worked. It makes sense.
Honestly,
real quick, you know what I find weird about that statement too? Like I'm not gonna switch from 2020 to Red.
Yeah,
you don't need to. Like, not only is it a different game, right? It's a different game in a different time period in the setting.
Yeah.
So, like, no, you don't need... Why are you making a stink? What are you doing?
Oh, why are you bitching about it?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because it's like...
It's like the people when Pathfinder 2e came out and people were like, no, I don't want to. I'm going to still play Pathfinder 1e. And to their credit, it took a little bit, but now people are starting to play Pathfinder 2e because they've had some updates and stuff. Originally, when it came out, people were kind of like, I'll stick with 1e.
I mean, my response is, if that's my response to that being like, I'm going to play Pathfinder 1st edition, fuck you, is, okay, Chief, go ahead. You don't need to make a statement about it. Knock yourself out, dude. Like, I don't give a shit. That's my response. Like, all right, bro.
Yeah. No, people were just like, they're trying to take my money.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, yeah, they gotta fucking make a living.
I mean, yeah, they are. They are by definition trying to take your money. They're trying to give you a game for it. So like,
they're trying to sell you a product.
I will say though, in regards to Cyberpunk, the one thing that makes me look at Red and go, well, I'm not playing the older versions, is net running in Red is so much cleaner. It's so much better that I'm like, why would I ever fuck with the old version? I'm good. If you've ever played a Cyberpunk game, you know what net running is like. And when I say Cyberpunk, I mean the genre. Net running is a time. You know, I went down a weird trip of memory lane about Shadowrun today, by the way, speaking of.
Oh.
I just thought about the novel series of Shadowrun I read and how Shadowrun's a mess of a game, because I saw a post where somebody was like, oh, what's one of the hardest games you've ever run? And so many people responded with Shadowrun. And I was like, oh, Shadowrun, why do you always creep back into my life? I don't want to deal with you. Oh, those books were so bad, both the game and the novels.
Really? Wait, what?
Oh yeah, the novel series
I thought you said you liked the novels.
No, it fucking sucked. I powered through it. I powered through those 3 books, but they sucked.
Why?
I don't remember specifically, like, it's been a while since I've read them, but like the ending was really bad. I remember the main character was just an asshat, like he was just a bad main character. It was also barely cyberpunk in theme. Like the main character was a shaman, and it was about him discovering his shamanistic powers, and it was like really heavy in the magic stuff, which I know there's magic in Shadowrun, obviously, but like it doesn't do any fucking Shadowrunning really. It's just and also the main character's like the fucking chosen one type, not literally, but pretty close. And like he discovers some ancient magical shamanistic ritual to like to fight back some great dark evil. Like it got really like not what I'm looking for in a Shadowrun story.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, and it was all about him saving his sister because she was goblinizing, and so she became an orc, and then she ran away from home. And then,
wait, what is goblin? I don't like that word.
Sorry. So in the Shadowrun setting, you're not. So the trolls and orcs, you're not born a troll or an orc. You're born a dwarf, an elf, or a human, and then you goblinize into an orc or a troll when you hit puberty. And nice. It's like a latent gene. It's like a latent gene in you.
I really don't like the word goblinize.
It's called goblinization. Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing.
No.
Oh no, he's goblining out.
It's literally called.
It's like I just think it's like they got goblinated. Well, it's fine. You can't goblinate booze. Oh, you could. Oh, they have to die then.
Here, just real brief. God damn it! I swear we're gonna get to the topic at some point.
Nah, it's fine.
Let me just read you the Shadowrun wiki entry on this. Goblinization began on the 30th of April, 2021. On this day, many humans, approximately 10% of the world's population, without any evident reason, transformed into orcs and trolls. In most cases, those humans started changing en masse before the very eyes of horrified spectators, causing much panic and basically everyone just transformed on the street. It was horrifying. This event made the population fearful and discriminatory, much more than UGE. That's another thing, doesn't matter. Meeting meta-humanity with hostility and sometimes force.
Did they ever say a reason of why like this? Because it just 10% just goblins.
Do you want?
Was it like a magic deity or some shit? It was just like, now I'm going to play.
I can't believe I'm doing this right now. In the Shadowrun universe, they live in what's called the Sixth World. There has been eras throughout time. There was the first, the second, the third. Magic has always existed in the world of Shadowrun, but it went through eras where magic was really, really high, and then magic went away, and then magic was high again, and then it went away. Early on in like, I think it's 2020 or something, the Sixth World began, otherwise known as the Sixth Age, because a dragon flew out of a volcano basically woke up and flew out of a volcano and like started attacking, I think it was Seattle. That dragon,
imagine living in Seattle.
By his, most of Shadowrun takes place primarily in Seattle. That dragon, by showing himself to humanity, reintroduced magic to the world, not because he did anything, but because his existence made humanity aware that magic exists, and by becoming aware, all of the magic started to come back to the forefront. So like magic has always existed, but because humanity wasn't aware of it, they couldn't utilize it. But the dragon showing up made everyone aware of it, and then the magic started to flow through the world again, and then weird shit happened like dwarves and elves and goblinization.
Okay, real shit though. If I ever play in a Shadowrun game, I'm just gonna play Goblin Slayer from Goblin Slayer Abridged. I just not. This is too perfect to be like, oh, my family got turned into goblins,
to be
so
fair,
I have to destroy
they're
all
not,
the goblins.
They're not goblins. They're trolls and orcs. It's just the transformation is called goblinizing, but they're not goblins. They don't turn into goblins. They turn into trolls and orcs, specifically.
Regardless, I'm still playing Goblin Slayer.
Oh yeah, there's also diseases that turn people into different things. So you have HMHVV1, VV2, VVBL. Those turn you into different things. Like it turns HMHVV1 turns humans into vampires, elves into banshees, dwarves into goblins, orcs into wendigos, and trolls into Dooznaku, which I don't remember what those are.
Wait, but you just said goblins weren't a thing.
No. I didn't say goblins weren't a thing. I said you're not born a goblin. You turn into an orc or a troll. Dwarves turn into goblins with the human metahuman vampiric virus. This also can. There's also a version of this that can turn humans into Nosferatus. Basically, Shadowrun, all of the weird creatures and stuff are like scientifically justified. Yeah, you have the human, metahuman, vampiric virus. This also turns people into like ghouls, for example.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This series seems like such a clusterfuck.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, okay, so the lore of I can't believe we've gone this deep. The lore of Shadowrun's actually really cool. The setting of Shadowrun is actually like a fun time. Like there's a lot of really cool shit in there. It's the game that's bad, not the setting. The game is bad. Like Sasquatch exists in the Shadowrun world. It's because Sasquatches are trolls that got infected with the virus. So they turned.
Is Mothman in it?
I don't know. Probably in some version, I would imagine. Yeah.
The ordinary moth, and then just got goblinized into Mothman.
Human metahuman vampiric virus version 3 is what turns people into ghouls. None of this has anything to do with anything we were supposed to be talking about.
What's our topic for today?
But here we are. Anyway, learning new games. I don't know how to. If you want to get into Shadowrun, play Shadowrun Returns, Shadowrun Dragonfall, and Shadowrun Hong Kong. Play those games. They're CRPGs set in the universe, made by harebrained schemes. They're far better introductions than the tabletop game is in any sense. All right. Learning new games. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't believe I just talked about Shadowrun that much. I'm just gonna jot down. Hold on. I need to jot a note to myself down real quick. Jesus. Somebody talk while I'm writing.
Yeah.
All right, you got it.
No, I was going to say, I was going to, because when we were brought up about this topic, I literally was like, I'm going to have the mindset of like, all right, speak to me like I'm 5. How do I learn a new table with 1T top RPG system? Like, or how do I learn, how do I absorb the knowledge into my cranium so I can be like, yes, now I will try other things out and then eventually go back to 5e because I like my hole, diggy hole.
I wish to punch you for those statements.
All right, Matt. Well, that's where we're gonna go. All right, I'm just gonna.
What are you gonna say?
Let me
I don't know anymore.
I don't know anymore either. Let me just start with what my first question is. This is mostly just a curiosity. This is not super important. I'm just curious. When the two of you, I feel like the funny thing about this question, even though Sam's not here, I feel like I know exactly what Sam's answer to this will be. His answer would be, I'm going to make a cup of tea and I'm going to sit down in that big circular chair I have and I'm just going to fucking pop the book open and read for 3 hours. I feel like that's going to be Sam's answer to this question.
It's called a Papasan chair.
Is that what it's called? I don't know what the fuck it's called.
Fucking awesome.
Anyway, and his cat would probably end up sitting in his lap. But yes, when you're like, all right, it's time to read. I got a new book to learn. What's the vibe? What's the atmosphere? How do you sit down, get comfy, and start reading? What do you do? What's the either one of you can go. I don't care.
So I'm gonna be real. The only way that I've ever been able to like consistently read RPGs is when there's something else that I should be doing. And I go, I don't want to do that. So I read a rule book.
Well, that's probably not good, but all right.
No, not at all. But when I do read, usually I just make myself a very large, quite strong cocktail. And I just sort of sit there and be like, okay, what's the character creator like? If it's simple enough, I'll read it on the spot. If it's not, I'll save it for later. Then the next thing I check is the equipment, because as we all know,
not what order. That's a separate question. I'm just curious about what the like you at your computer, you chilling on the couch, you fucking laying back on the bed. Like what's the atmosphere around?
Well, when I used to have a laptop, because it's busted now, but I used to like chill out in bed and like put a movie on in the background and read it.
Okay. Yeah. Then you start jumping around. All right, Matt, what about you?
Weird. Yeah, I guess I just sit on my computer. I feel bad because like I don't.
You don't have a ritual?
Not really, because like
maybe that's part of your problem.
Well, the only thing, again, I don't really play a lot of other games.
No, but you have to read like adventures or new rule stuff for 5e, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Even if we're talking like,
yeah, but I don't. Oh, I just like if I have to like read a new adventure, or there's like, a thing I'm stealing from and about to run for my players in my game.
Yeah. Anything.
Yeah, I just sit down, chill on my computer, or reading, like prepping. Like it's weird. My reading D&D or tabletop knowledge brain and my like D&D prepping knowledge brain part are like the same thing. It's all like the same creative thing. So I'm taking notes. I got like my notepad document out. Not notepad. What the fuck do I use? Whatever.
Well, yeah, I know.
I have my DM notes out on one screen. I have the PDF on the other screen. I'm reading. Taking notes maybe, or to be honest, a lot of times if I'm reading something, I'll also maybe watch a video on the same on the same subject about it or something similar to it and get a better grasp of what the fuck I'm reading.
Okay, real quick. Is it just me? This is sort of for reading in general. I need something on in the background. I think a lot of people are like that. Each needs like something to eat the silence, right? But I can't listen to music with lyrics because then I'll just start singing the lyrics, not reading.
Yep.
So I usually end up watching movies. But if I really like watching movies, so it has to be a movie that I've seen about a billion times.
Yeah.
Like Dune.
You put Dune on again.
I'll just put Dune on and I'll watch Dune for the 450th time.
Yeah, I can't do that. I can't have I'll have music without lyrics in the background, but like if I'm even if it's like a book, right now I'm starting to begin the. What's it called? The Way of Kings, new Brandon
novels
Sanderson.
are different. Yeah, novels
are different.
I read in total silence.
But like when I'm like doing D&D stuff, same. It's almost like the same thing. Like maybe something very minor in the background, like no talking.
Right, hold on,
no
wait
singing.
a minute. I feel like I need to grill you here, Matt, because now I'm feeling confused. Because the way you were describing, you're like, oh yeah, if I need to read a new adventure or something, it's real easy. I throw it in, jump down, start taking notes. Why can you not apply that same strat to reading a new game?
Because I'm already on the learning curve of D&D, where my knowledge of 5e and how to run it is. I'm already on the part of like I understand 90% of it. When it comes to learning a brand new thing, I feel like learning that is a little different.
It's not though. That's the thing. I think you're creating a fallacy for yourself. It's not actually different.
No, I understand what he's saying though, right? Like because you don't have to stop to think about the mechanics really because you know them. It sort of just becomes a what's the phrase I'm looking for? I
don't even want to say reflex because it's
exactly. It's a little more habitual because you're like, oh well, I don't have to think about I'm not really learning anything. It's just giving me information to think about something in a new way, you know?
I'm more so creating when it comes to that stuff, because it's like if I'm reading an adventure, I'm taking it and I'm being like, okay, should I run this the way it is? Should I change some stuff in it? You know, I'm making the map on Roll20 or whatever. Like, there's a couple of different things, but I feel like it's different when like I have to learn a new system. But yeah, you don't have to, when you're reading a new book or reading a new system and you're trying to learn it. 9 times out of 10, I tried I tried with the Kamigagari game. I just couldn't. I couldn't sit down. I did the thing where I'm like, I'm just gonna skim some pages, read a couple things, skim some pages, look at the cool art, skim some pages. Even that, I couldn't do it.
I mean, I don't think you were that invested in learning that game, so I don't think that game's a particularly good example, I'm gonna be honest. But
right, yeah,
I think you're pigeonholing yourself, because it's not that different of a vibe. Like, there's a little bit of the extra layer of needing to, grasp, like when you read something and you go, I don't understand what that rule means. That there is a little bit of an extra layer there, but everything else is pretty much the same. And the idea of like, oh, well, I'm creating while I'm reading something for 5e. You could do the same thing. Like when I'm reading a new game, as I'm reading through it, I'm conjuring ideas for the type of campaign I would run using that game. I'm thinking about the type of characters I might want to have. I'm thinking about the kind of creatures I might want to have those characters fight. Like I'm sort of prepping a game that I'm not actually running when I'm reading a new game. Like, and you can do the same stuff. Like, I think you're sort of unintentionally, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you're saying to yourself that it's different, but I don't actually think it's that different.
Maybe. I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but from just my light Googling, I'm not the only one with this issue. There's a bunch of people in the tabletop space who kind of are like, they're either in the same boat of, I've been playing 5e for so long, I don't want to learn, not that I don't want to learn, but like, some people don't want to learn a new system because they don't want to have to go through the effort again of like, oh, I was at the beginner stage and then it took me a couple years and now I'm at the, I don't know, master stage, whatever the fuck. Or there are people who are just like, oh, there's a lot of these complex rules and I'm getting like things mixed up. And like right now, actually a good example, it has nothing to do with like tabletop. I'm trying to learn how to draw with Clip Studio Paint and animate with Clip Studio Paint. And the program is just different enough from Photoshop that certain things are labeled differently. And like one thing that's like a layer in Photoshop is a different layer in Clip Studio. So that happens a lot with tabletop games, I feel like, as well, where it's like things are just slightly different. And then you just mix up systems by accident.
But here's my thing. Okay, well, first of all, mixing up rules between games, I don't think is that big of a deal. Like, whatever. Oh, it's supposed to be this mechanic. I confused it with that mechanic from another game. It's not really that big of a deal. Like, whatever. While you're playing, you mix them up sometimes. I don't think that should be. I don't think that should really impede you in any way. And when I say you, I don't necessarily mean you specifically, but I don't think people should don't let that impede learning a new system. I don't think that's like a big deal. But on top of that, the thing you said where you're like, oh, I don't want to start back at being a beginner. You're not. You're never starting back at being a beginner. You can't start being back at a beginner. That's actually not true, because you've played once you've played one tabletop game, any system, doesn't matter. You are no longer a beginner because you have a grasp of how it works fundamentally. The same way that you going from Photoshop to Clip Studio Paint, it's different. So you have to learn, oh, there's a couple of buttons moved around. Certain things might have a slightly different name, but you can learn it way quicker than when you learned Photoshop initially, because you have a baseline to start from. And that's that whole thing I'm talking about with legacy skill, which I've mentioned in a previous episode, is you're not starting from zero. You are starting from a baseline. Because you can't start from zero. Once you've learned one system, that's it. You can no longer start from zero unless you get into a horrible car accident and have long-term memory loss. But assuming your brain is functioning properly, you can't start from zero. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, sure. Like, think about it this way, Matt, right? To use the Clip Studio Paint example. You're like, oh, I'm learning, I'm trying to learn Clip Studio Paint. You already know what the brush tool is. You already know what the eraser tool is. You already know how layers work. You already know what layer types are, because those are all the same as in Photoshop. They're the same in Photoshop and Clip Studio. So if you look up a video in Clip Studio and the person mentions using a layer, you know what they mean already. You know what I mean? Like, you do have a baseline. It's there.
You know, actually, I should have specified. It's not the brushes and the layers. It's the animating features. That's the one.
Don't latch on to my specific example. I'm just talking broadly. Like, yes, you have to learn new stuff, but you're not starting from zero, is all my point is.
Right.
Like, even with the animation, you've animated in other programs, right? Because starting from zero would be, you don't know what a frame you don't know what a frame is. You don't know what FPS is. That would be starting from zero, but you're not starting from that place. You've animated before. So you go into Clip Studio Paint animating, and someone says, all right, here's your setting for your FPS. You don't need to look up what FPS is. You know what that is already. Right? So you're already not starting from zero. Tabletop's the same thing. You don't need to know. You don't need to look up what a game master is. You already know. You've played a game. You don't need to look up what what dice are. You already know. You know what I mean? That one's dice are a weird example, but you know, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't need to look up what a player character is. You've seen that phrase already. So you're never actually starting from zero. Well, and you are the first time. No, like, it's one of those things where a lot of people, and as someone who's taught young children, and when I'm saying young, I mean I've taught 4-year-olds. There's a lot of things you take for granted when you're teaching someone something that you think is just intrinsic, basic knowledge that you take for granted because you've known it for so long. But what you tend to forget a lot of the time. Oh, this person's starting from 0. They're not like me. They're not starting from like 5 points. They're starting from nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I literally had kids when I was teaching at one of the camps I taught at. I had kids who didn't know what a right click was on a mouse because they've only used tablets.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
They didn't know
nowadays.
there was a left and a right click. That's what I'm talking about. But that's starting from 0. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you come into a new tabletop game, and this is not me talking to Matt, this is talking to literally anyone who listens who's having a similar conundrum to Matt. Don't scare yourself by thinking, oh, I don't want to have to start all the way from beginner again. Because you're not. You're just not. Again, caveat, unless all your memory disappears because of a traumatic car accident or something. But assuming that doesn't happen, you're not. You know what I mean? You're not a beginner. Utilize that knowledge. And I'm going to get into this more later. Because when I get into the legacy skill thing, I'm going to show you how you can look at both you, Matt, and anyone listening, because I think you'll be a good example for this if what I'm saying makes sense. How you can take mechanics from every other game and apply them and rationalize them using 5e.
And smush them into my 5e game, so I never have to play any other ones. Got it.
I was waiting.
How you can learn them. How you can learn them using 5e as a base.
So it's
now. I'm going to go down my baseline questions, though, before we get to that point. But we're going to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I guess I should answer my own question, huh? Yeah, it's pretty similar, Isaiah, to what you said for me, where I'll sit down. Usually I'll make like coffee or actually a lot of the time when I wake up in the morning, I'll sit down on my couch. I'll throw something on like YouTube on my Chromecast, but like a video that I don't necessarily have to pay like a ton of attention to. Or something, you know, like a playthrough of a game or something, so I don't need to be like super in there. And I've been reading off my phone a lot because I can just whip out my phone whenever and just read through the PDF when I feel like it. Or honestly, when I've been like driving around doing DoorDash, if I'm like waiting on an order, I've pulled my phone out a few times and just read through some rule stuff really quick. Because reading it, having the PDF on your phone makes it real easy to be like, well, I got 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than spending 5 minutes on like fucking, TikTok or some bullshit. It's like, oh, well, I'll do some reading. You know what I mean? I will say.
Call that as real.
Yeah. If I have If I have a book physically, I might like, and it's nice out, I'll like sit outside, I'll make coffee and like read it like old school, old lady style outside. But obviously you can't do that all the time. Yeah, so similar vibe to you, Isaiah, but I don't make any alcohol because I don't drink that often.
Don't worry, it'll be soon. You already watched mixology videos, bud. You're gonna be in it. Don't you worry.
I mean, I won't. There's many things that will stop me, but sure.
You like when you actually read a physical book, do you like do the thing where like you highlight certain sections, or like you take the little sticky notes?
No.
No.
Negative.
No.
Sir.
Books
Negative.
are sacred.
Oh.
I'm very.
Well, not even take notes, but like just take a highlighter or a pen or something. And
my God, no. Oh no,
it's your book.
No, I'm very precious with my books.
Not even like sticky notes, or it's like
nope, nothing to damage the page.
I actually have something that will make Josh angrier than me not taking notes. I just opened the PDF, and every page that I think is interesting, I'll just open a new tab.
Oh my God, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So
Listen. All right,
Negative.
At least you're doing it for a purpose when you're doing that, right? There is a reason behind that, so I can understand it a little bit more. But no, in regards to what you said, Matt, I am really, really precious with any of the books I own. I get very mad if somebody else borrows a book of mine and damages it. I got real mad at my dad about that because he damaged my copy of Scar Tissue. I'm very precious with my books. I'm very protective. I have a couple of old books that got really beat up from being in like my book bag in high school and stuff, and I'm very sad about that. But yeah, no, I don't.
Well, I can understand. I can understand with like novels or like
all books
or like art books or whatever. But like, I feel like the player handbook or something like that. Like, if it's yours, it's like even like just like the little tiny sticky note tabs.
That
mark
sticky
certain
shit.
pages.
That sticky shit damages the pages.
Don't put it on any words.
Doesn't matter. Damages the finish. Not doing it. I still my fourth edition books in my closet, fucking pristine. Which are fun to flip through every once in a while, by the way. Sometimes I just bust out my 4th edition monster manual.
I just love the fucking art. I just love.
I know. God damn, 4th edition had such good art. Fucking A.
That's why I like looking at the Pathfinder books because it's the same dude. I'm just like, God, fuck, what's his name?
The 4th edition art was busting.
Waynard Reynolds, right?
I don't remember his name.
The artist? Fuck, I'm so sorry. I feel bad. I love the
cover
artist,
of the first 4E monster manual with Orcus.
Oh, it's so cool.
Fucking big badass red Orcus with the fucking green Mesa Death.
You know what I didn't realize for the longest time? The 4E, the player handbook cover with the Dragonborn and the human standing on it. The Dungeon Master guide with the red dragon pondering his orb. Inside the orb is the image of the Dragonborn and the fighter.
That's actually kind of cool. Are you laughing at the orb pondering?
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally pondering his orb.
Look at it.
Okay, wait.
Hold on, I gotta find this cover.
Weird, fucking tangent. But do you guys know who Kyle Hill is?
Yes.
No, that's.
So a few years ago, he did a video on something called the Demon Core. It was like a minier. It was the core of a nuclear reactor that they had done experiments on that went catastrophic about 4 different times. And it sort of exploded in the pop culture in like almost like a weird zeitgeist. And he's like, "Is it weird that I have a wizard pondering his demon core?" Yes, little 3D printed of the wizard pondering the demon core, and I was like, I want that so fucking.
Isaiah, look at that dragon. Is he not pondering the orb?
Yeah, look, he's pondering the orb. The player handbook image. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah,
I like how it took me this long too to like realize that. I'm just like, I just look at some nonsense.
Anyway,
I don't know. Shit. It's so sorry. Not that I don't know. It's always. It's just funny when people draw dragons fucking yoked. I just like I don't know what else I was gonna say. Why is the dragon so fucking
jacked?
ripped?
Because he has like a almost comic book-y style.
No, I know, but the dragon has veins under its scales.
Yeah, dude, he's fucking.
It also looks
like
it also looks like the dragon has 2 delts. His deltoids?
It does look at his two delts. I think it's funny that you haven't brought up his tiny little haunches, but his big ass forearms.
That's anyway, not about this right now. We're not talking about 4th edition art, although the 4th edition art is very good. But anyway, so I'm curious. What is the thing? And I don't know, Matt, maybe you may not have an answer to this, but what makes you think I want to look at a new game? I'm looking for something different. What's the impetus usually? And we'll start with Isaiah and Matt, if you have an idea.
Yeah, start with Isaiah, because my answer is going to be, you're not going to like it.
That's fine.
I mean, pretty much I think what anyone else's is, right? Like, you see media that you really like and you go, oh, how could I do that in TTRPG format? And it's even better if there's like a direct comparison. So, oh, I just watched Mad Max play Apocalypse World or Hellscapes. Oh, I just watched Cyberpunk. Oh, guess what? There's a whole fucking game about that setting, Or like, it could be as simple as like, oh, I like this idea. So like, I was like, I don't think anyone's surprised that I've been on like a weird Kamen Rider kick for the last month and a half. And I was like, I wonder if you could do that in masks. I kind of want to try.
Yeah. Don't think masks would be the game for them.
Damn it.
You could look at
maybe. I know a lot of people are saying, shit, is it?
I don't know enough about Kamen Rider to make a firm decision
Savage
on that,
Worlds? That's the superhero one a lot of people really like? No? Oh, isn't
Savage Worlds is not superhero.
Fuck, what am I thinking of?
Not sure.
Yeah, I'm assuming that is you as well, Josh.
No, actually, no.
Oh.
Most of the time, the impetus for me looking into a new game is, one, I'm bored of the game I'm currently running, and I've played it, and I'm done with it. I've gotten enough out of it, which is kind of where I'm at currently. Or two, I heard about a new game or listened to an actual play of a new game that sounded super dope, and now I want to try it. I pretty rarely, I wouldn't say never, but I rarely do the thing where it's like, oh, piece of media, how do I tabletop this? I don't do that very often. What I will do a lot of the time is read a new tabletop game and then go, oh, I could do this kind of a vibe that I saw on this show with this game.
Okay. So
like, for example, I read Blades in the Dark. I watched Peaky Blinders and went, oh, Blades in the Dark, I could just do that. I could just play Peaky Blinders. It's perfect. To give you an example. Or for, sometimes it's bi-directional. Like The Witcher, obviously I've wanted to run like a Witcher style game for a while, but I've also like certain tabletop games have given me that idea, but also the video games and the show gave me that thought. So that one kind of went in both directions. But yeah, no, a lot of the time it's either from an actual play or someone mentioning a game that sounds really dope. Like I kind of want to try Morkborg, but I have no idea what kind of game I would do. It just sounds like a cool game to play.
Everything I've heard about Morkborg is that it's hilarious and super fun, and I really want to play it.
It's very over the top, and also kind of Morkborg's kind of funny because it's they prioritized art over legibility, so in a lot of ways it's an art book rather than a rule book.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, like there's parts of the book where like they actively chose to make it look cool, so much so that you're like, oh, this is actually a little difficult to read. Not so bad that you can't read it, but there are some parts where it's like definitely it's like a little harder.
It's like some of the most important rules, and you're like, ooh, art.
Yeah, it's not quite that bad, but it's kind of like how, Persona 5, right, really prioritized that UI to the point where sometimes you're like, I can read it, but I have to focus a little bit to read it. You know what I mean? Although Persona 5 did a pretty good job of that for the most part. Matt, what's the answer to get me mad?
Well, part of it is also, like Isaiah said, the media. Like, Edge Runners came out, so watched that. Wanted to play a lot of Cyberpunk 2077. Played a lot of that. I vote since actually, since CD Projekt Red announced Cyberpunk, and then since I found out about it being a tabletop, I've always kind of like been in and out of like wanting to play the tabletop game. And I've watched a couple videos on like Cyberpunk 2020. So mostly, yeah, like same thing, you know, watching, you know, The Witcher and being like, oh, I want to run something like that. So yeah, outside media. The other half, though, and I feel bad. I am actually like really, you know, I'm happy with 5e. I'm really happy with my D&D fantasy thing. So most of the time, if I see a cool idea, because I'm also currently running 5e, my brain immediately goes, well, how can I do that in my campaign?
That in 5e, yeah.
Yeah, that's just where my brain goes.
The immediate just
like, yeah, I feel bad because I know it's gonna like.
I know, no,
but like, but I'm, you know, it's the game I'm running. You know, that from you know, I like to think I'm a pretty good DM for the most part. So it's like most of the time I can, like, I know I make the Zbashu joke of jerry rigging things, but like, you know, 5e is kind of easy enough that you can kind of do that. A lot of shit. Like The Witcher extent, hunting.
Yeah. I was gonna say I reject that premise, but I'm not gonna go down that road right now.
I know.
I know a lot of people say that, and I think it's not as cut and dry as that.
I also now am like more open to like, because beforehand I was like, you know what, I'm happy with 5e. I really don't need to learn another game. Now I'm kind of like, you know, the last like, you know, couple years I've been looking at other games and just, you know, once in a while of like something that'll like, you know, grab my attention, or like hearing something from you guys. Like, was it like 2 months ago, Isaiah? I was asking you like, are there any good 40k like RPGs? Just because I'm like, yeah, buddy. But I'm like, that'd be cool because like we were talking a lot of 40k, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll finally dip my toes and actually learn something about 40k besides orc shit.
You have no. So I'm right now. I'm listening to The Devastation of Baal as an audiobook, and that's the big Blood Angels vs Tyranids book that like everybody was like raving about a few years back, and it's so fucking good already. Like I'm like barely halfway to the end. Like the big fight hasn't even started, and I'm just like, oh my god, I love all of this. It's so good, and I was like, I would love to do a Devastation of Baal style Last Man Standing, just horde of enemies. Oh, it just sounds so fun, you know?
Yeah, I just like one shot or something. Like, yeah,
I just had a fun thought. Or maybe fun's the wrong word. A useful thought, maybe? Hey, yo, where's our TTRPG audiobooks?
I literally was thinking about that.
Is that a good idea?
So, to a point, yes. I think when it comes to rules, absolutely. But imagine having to listen to tables through an audio.
Yeah, how would you do that?
That sounds awful. I mean, say like it should be gobbledygook.
Don't most actual plays have like podcast versions and stuff?
No, man. I'm talking about an audio book like you read, like audiobooks where they read the novel, but they read the rule book.
Oh,
yeah.
For them, it's just explain the rules, yeah, but then like going into like dice and spells. I feel like that is actually a thing for the seeing impaired.
It probably is, but it.
No, I'm not talking like text to speech or anything though. I'm talking about like the level of production quality that some audiobooks get, where it's like it's really well thought out. It's not just them reading, like they're actually. Because imagine someone reading a tabletop game to you that has played the game and understands the rules really well, and they're reading the rules to you, and then every once in a while they stop and like explain like, this is how this works, or this is how this is how I used it at my table. Like it's a lot of work, but it's just this is an interesting idea that just flew into my brain. The other thing is, I just want to, with audiobooks, I've never listened to an audiobook because I feel a weird guilt about audiobooks, where like if I listen to an audiobook novel, like a novel on an audiobook, I feel like I'm going to be guilty. I'm like, well, I didn't read it though. Is that weird?
No, it's I mean, I used to
definitely
read.
Interesting. I don't see.
I have a thing.
I used to listen
reading
to audiobooks, and now I can actually like, you know, because I used to be that kid throughout middle school and high school, and I didn't like reading because I was an idiot.
That's the thing I like reading.
Yeah, like I like you know, stories and media and like watching movies and shit, but I could never because again I had some like reading disability as a kid, so I just couldn't sit down and read. So the next best thing, one of my buddies got me into audiobooks, and I started listening to a fuck ton of audiobooks.
Yeah, see,
and after a while, I finally was like, you know what? I think I started reading, and I actually was faster reading, than listening to the audiobooks. I actually ended up, when you watch an anime, and eventually you're just like, well, yeah, I'm gonna read the manga. You can read faster than listen.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I literally did that with audiobooks. Yeah, because I'm like, fuck it, this audiobook's taking too long. I'm just gonna read the book. Fuck this.
The funny thing is, I'm actually a pretty slow reader, so that probably wouldn't be the case for me. But yeah, I don't know. When it comes to audiobooks for me, I part of the reading is not just getting the story. I also it's the act of reading. Put a lot of value in the act of reading itself. But now that Matt, you just said you had issue and didn't like reading back in the day, this seems like something that would translate to the tabletop scenario.
Maybe. Well, it's weird because I like reading now. Like I like reading novels. I don't have the issue. I know you guys, or I think it's Sam who hates reading PDFs.
No, I don't have that problem. I think Sam's kind of crazy on that one.
Okay.
No, I read. I pretty much exclusively read PDFs.
Yeah, I don't mind reading now. I guess it's just I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe it's the fact of the you mentioned. Maybe it's just I'm putting that wall, the imaginary wall in front of me when it comes to tabletop rules.
Yeah, it might be.
Maybe because I can read a book, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I will say in regards to what you were saying, where you're like, oh, every time I see a piece of media, I think about how I can just slam it into 5e. Yes, it does annoy me slightly. However, I get it, because there's a lot of things going on there. One, first and foremost, I think everyone's first tabletop game, everyone is in a abusive Stockholm relationship with whatever first tabletop game they played. I think that's just the case. Even if it might not be good, there's a lot of people out there who played Shadowrun first and are like, this game's fucking ass, but I refuse to stop playing it. So there's that. So I totally understand, 5e is the first game I got really invested in. Emotional attachment, don't want to get rid of it. So
as much as I liked Scion back in the day, I didn't have a good experience. Yeah, you didn't have a good experience.
Right. So exactly. The other thing though is 5e as a system also, and I would imagine Pathfinder players probably also have this problem, and Shadowrun players probably also feel this way. 5e tends to be a really big commitment time-wise. You tend to play a lot of sessions for a really long time, because that game takes fucking forever. So rather you're like, well, my campaign's not going to end anytime soon, so I have a cool idea, so I'm just going to have to shove the cool idea I have into my current campaign, because I'm not finishing anytime soon, because I'm playing 5e and it takes forever. So I get it in that regard too, which is one of the reasons I am capped in shorter campaigns. But that's topic for another time. So yes, it annoys me slightly, but I also understand why you do it and why other people do it and what the impetus, what the desire there is for me. The reason I tend to not do it is because I think for me, I get annoyed if I try to graft something onto 5e, right? If I'm playing my current campaign, I have a cool idea and I want to try and graft it onto my game. I get mad when the game doesn't do it as well as I want it to. I get annoyed. I'm like, well, this isn't working exactly the way I want, because it's not meant to, do the thing I'm trying to do. And then I get annoyed. So rather than put myself through that frustration, I go, well, I'm going to look for a game that does what I want. You know what I mean? So rather than trying to run a heist in 5e, my brain went, well, I'm going to play Blades in the Dark instead. You know what I mean? So that, and then the other thing for me is I like to try and run games in such a fashion that the style of game, the style of campaign, I should say, really fits well with the type of game I'm running. So if I'm running Masks, I'm running a superhero campaign because that's what the game does. If I'm running 5e, I'm running heroic fantasy because that's what the game does. If I'm running Blades in the Dark, we're playing scoundrels and we're robbing and we're doing heisting and we're doing scores and we're, you know, up in our criminal empire because that's what the game does. I don't like to try and force games outside of what they're meant to do because I don't know. It just feels like I want to know. I look at it and go, "Hey, designers, what do you want? What do you think would be fun? Designers, tell me what do you want from this game?" And then I read it and I go, "Okay, that's what you want from this game." You know, like I look at each one in the same way that I don't get annoyed at like, you know, I don't get mad at Street Fighter for not playing like Bayonetta, right? They're two different things. I wouldn't expect one to play like the other. I don't expect Final Fantasy X to play like a puzzle platformer because it's not. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my mentality with tabletop games.
I think though there is something to say about stress testing a system to see what it can do.
Yeah, sure.
Rather than being like, oh, it won't be able to do this that well. It's like, well,
yeah, you could. Yeah,
I figure it's worth trying it and seeing like. Maybe it won't do it perfectly, but if it gets 9 out of the 10 things like pretty decently, that would, for me, that'd be like, oh, I'll just stick with this system for X and Y. And if I want like a super hyper focused, completely like not even any like, obviously I wouldn't play a Gundam game in Blades in the Dark, right?
Yeah.
But if you could do something like God damn it. If you could do something like, you know, we have mech suits in 5e technically, right? With like the Sacred Armor of Luco or whatever the fuck. And you're like, okay, well, it gives you like a means by which to pilot a suit and, or, you know, if you wanted to have like the Ava Berserk state, the armor does explain like it has its own personality and it'll do X, Y, and Z. So like you can just sort of stress test what it can do. And then if it can't, and you come to the conclusion that it just can't do it, then yeah, I'd be like, you know what? I got to find something more focused than that. You know?
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. But I have two things that make it so I tend to not do that. One is I think I have a pretty, and you know, maybe I'm up my own ass here, but whatever. I think I have a pretty good eye for design in such a way that I can look at a game and tell if it's gonna be good at doing what I want or not. Like I think I've gotten to the point where I can look and be like, is this gonna do the premise that I'm thinking of? Reads through the rules. No, I don't think it will. Like I've gotten pretty, I think I've gotten solid at that skill. The other thing is I'm always looking for an excuse to play more games, not less. So if I say I have X and Y idea and then somebody tells me, oh, there's a game for exactly that, I get excited. I'm like, ooh, a new game to play. Not as opposed to me being like, I want to try and force the game I'm already playing to do this. Like, I want a reason to play more games. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I'm always on the hunt for more. I'm not trying to find less.
Yeah, yes, I see what you're saying. And it is a valid thing to like be like, well, I just want to learn another game. For me though, a lot of what comes into me
it's
being
not just
like
that. Well, I want to learn another game. I want to see how other designers design shit to see different ideas. I want to give more creators money for the work they do. You know, I want to try out like different vibes. Like, there's a lot of reasons I think to just look for more.
Sure. For me though, the thing that I often like have to figure out when it comes to learning a new game is like economizing my time. There's a lot of games that I want to learn, like, you know, for example, City of Mist, I really want to learn because I just love the idea of it. Everyone's basically been like, we got to learn Lancer. Wrath and Glory is another one, but it's like, I got to figure out when I'm going to find the time to read all these fucking games. And in the meanwhile, you know, do some futzing with what I got. And then when I get around to it, I can get to it.
Yeah, especially if you're already running a game, like, you know, unless you're Unless you're a madman and running like, a bunch of different games at the same time. Like, all right, today I got 5e, the next day I got Pathfinder, the next day I got Cyberpunk, and you're just like, Jesus.
Well, those 3 examples would be very hard.
Yeah.
I see the real shit. This is a slight tangent. Almost every person, 9 out of 10 times, I've seen someone be like, I'm gonna take on a second game, and I'm just like, I feel like you're gonna burn yourself out, and 9 out of 10 times they've burned themselves out.
Like running a second game or
makes
playing
me so sad.
I've said
running a second game.
Yeah, or no, I don't understand.
Unless
you're one of these people on Roll20, like getting paid for it.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Fucking,
that's
don't
different.
do it.
Yeah. No. I've said this multiple times. Running multiple games, it really, really heavily depends on what games you are running. Because I've run 3 games at once before, and it was not that bad. But those 3 games were Apocalypse World and Dungeon World, and I think Apocalypse World twice, actually. I think it was 2 Apocalypse World, 1 Dungeon World. Those games are not that hard to run in tandem with one another because the between session prep is not that heavy. It's occasionally it will get a little heavier when big shit happens, but for the most part, it's not super heavy. Another good example is I could totally see myself running like Stars Without Number and Worlds Without Number and like Masks or something, because all of those Stars and Worlds Without Number are really prep heavy, but on the front end, they're front loaded. And then once you do a lot of that front end prep, running the players through it, not that bad. Fairly straightforward. And then Mass is another Powered by the Apocalypse game, so generally wouldn't be too stressed about it. If I were to say try and run Pathfinder in 5e, no, I would shoot myself. Because 5e, I mean, I don't know how Pathfinder is, but 5e prep in particular for me has been fucking brutal. Like, just nah. You know what I mean? Or if I had to run Shadowrun in 5e, hell to the no. So it really, really depends on the games.
Hell to the no.
Oh, and also I'm also not gonna run multiple instances of 5e. Unless, one exception, maybe I could see myself running 1 adventure game and 1 homebrew game. I could maybe see myself doing that. But only because the adventure game offloads a lot of that issue. You know what I mean?
You would think.
I mean, it does. Like, it offloads like maps and monsters and shit. And then the other which are the 2 big ones for me, at least. Like, maps, monsters, encounters, like, those are the big ones. And the adventure offloads a lot of that.
Yeah.
The in-between stuff of, like, connecting and weaving them together and shit, that's not that part's easier for me. It doesn't stress me as much. So yeah, the multi-games thing, it depends. It really depends. And then there's some games, I mean, there's some games that are also kind of hilariously like not what you'd expect. Burning Wheel, for example, is a really complicated like game to play, but a really easy game to GM. Like, it's real easy to run because a lot of what you're doing is just sort of coming up with ideas, pushing against the players, telling the players what dice to roll. By the way, can I just say, I really love systems where I, as the GM, don't have to roll dice. Big fan.
Yeah, you really. City Mist does not require rolling dice from the GM. A
lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, the GM does not have to roll dice, and it's honestly kind of fun for me because it turns you become this like. It's like the players roll dice, and then they all look at you and go, "All right, what happens, arbitrator?" And you go, "Well, you see, this is what happens today." Like, there's kind of a fun like. You're running the theater show vibe going on there. And yeah, Burning Wheel, you almost never roll dice. I think occasionally you'll do contested rolls if it makes sense, but most of the time you don't. Yeah. So,
actually, I don't know why this thought just came into my head. I actually really like, ever since I saw the Crash Panda 1-page tabletop game, I like that idea.
1-page,
just like 1-page
those
RPGs.
Are interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
My problem is I feel like a lot of those I haven't tried any of those, but I feel like I would just end up wanting more out of them and then sad that there isn't more. But yeah, it's a fun idea. All right. Next question time. You're not getting through this at the pace I was expecting, but that's okay. Maybe it's a good thing Sam's not here, because if there were 4 of us, I don't even know. All right.
Just read the rules.
So you sit
crying
down,
in the corner. No.
You've made an old fashioned. You've brewed up some coffee. You're comfy in your chair. You got your computer on. You got some lo-fi beats to study to. What's the page you open up to? What section do you go to first?
Character creator, or equipment. Those are the only 2.
Interesting. Character creation, I get. I think a lot of people do that. Why equipment? Is it just because you put a lot of value in that?
Yeah, because I pretty much. Like the thing that I think I talked about it in the equipment episode. The thing that I'm like, yes, is when the game makes me, it like rewards me for thinking about things and using every tool at my disposal. So like a lot of the time, and like you've seen me do this as Django, where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy a sack of flour to create a vapor explosion, shit like that, where I'm just like, I just want to be able to do like, I want to use my actual knowledge to like do things, but also if the game supports it and lets me do things with the technology at my disposal, I'm gonna do it. And like it's so fulfilling for me. And I just think it's really fun.
Okay, makes sense. Brende Poppy.
But there was I think my favorite fucking crackhead determination thing I've ever done in 5e was probably, I never got to use them either. It sucked. But I was like, oh, we can make I can make white phosphorus grenades, and I can evaporate silver iodide in them to cancel out werewolf healing and just gas an entire fortress full of werewolves. It was, I never got to do it because the campaign ended, but I was like, I am going to become a monster.
Yeah, no, I hate that.
Everyone's like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, if you think about it, if you vaporize the silver, they're gonna be breathing it in, which they're not gonna have a good time with. But because it's in the air, I won't need magic weapons or silver weapons to harm them and keep them harmed, because the silver is gonna be seeping into everything.
I don't think that's actually how that works, but all right.
I laugh. It's like the vampire casts gusts of wind. No, you reversing.
No.
Okay, so the equipment set, yeah, and I mean character creation. I get. I think a lot of people jump to character creation first because a lot of people put a lot of value in character creation as like a representation of how the game works. Yeah, is that your pick, Matt? Character creation. Is there any?
That's probably gonna be my first pick now. Yeah.
Even if you're running the game, is it different if you were gonna run the game?
Yeah, because I feel like you can get a sense like once you like. I feel like probably one of the better ways is either you as the player with a DM or you as the DM with the player, like one-on-one, like you guys both making a character, whether it's your character or
well, you're just assume you're just looking at it though, right? Like there's no one else.
Just looking,
you're
just reading.
Just when you're reading, yeah, when you're sitting down to
probably
read.
Character creator, yeah, honestly, still probably just character creator, and then going back and forth between like. All right, what does charisma mean? Goes up to page 7 of whatever.
Interesting. Either one of you.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I'm gonna run the game, I'm basically my 3. Like I'm either looking at XP or like the reward system chapter. Like what are players rewarded for doing? That's that one I often will jump to first. If I know it's a combat heavy game, I will look at the combat section first. Or I'll look at the GM section and see what kind of tools the game gives me and or tells me to use for running. Those are usually my starters.
Oh, you know.
Because most books, most other tabletops, the DMG and the player handbook thing.
No one else. Okay.
Yeah, only Wizards does the 3 books.
Not only Wizards, But
most people, because most people, they'll have the one big book and then the monster book.
Nah, yeah, a lot of games don't even do that. Most games are just one book, honestly. Like, Wizards does the 3 books, Paizo does the 3 books. I know Shadowrun does the 3 books. Was who Shadowrun made by? Catalyst Games does the 3 books.
Oh wait, because Paizo, when 2nd edition came out, the first book, it's one book.
Oh, it is. That's right. You're right. They changed that. You're totally right.
They changed it. And then when they added in the quote unquote the Game Master book, that was basically their version of Xanathar's.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Most games do not do the 3 book thing. And honestly, I think the 3 book thing is a goofy, outdated model, and I don't like it.
It is. I think. Again, I don't know because it's Wizards and D&D, so very popular. But I think from some of the stuff I've been reading that Chris Perkins has been saying about like what he would like to implement with the new Dungeon Master's Guide, there's a part of me that feels like Wizards are very much attached to the fucking Volo formula of like, it's a player book and a Dungeon Master book. And it's like, well, how about you guys just make, the player book, like not like a lot of the stuff in the player shit or a lot of the stuff in the DM book, you can swap out stuff from the player handbook and put in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and a lot of stuff in the DM Dungeon Master's Guide and throw it in the player handbook.
Yeah.
So maybe they might.
I think they should be
end up switching it to the one book, especially if they're calling it one D&D. It's one D&D. You only need the one book and the monster manual.
So yeah, this is the thing, right? Part of the reason for the 3 book setup is because I want to go on this. We're going on this tangent. This isn't even really a tangent.
We gotta answer these questions.
No. It's not, no. This is relevant. I had to think about this, but this is relevant. Part of the reason I think they do it is because if you put them all in one book, then you got a thick ass book, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are intimidated by a thick ass book.
Probably. I mean, that's why they started to do like the packets with like Spelljammer.
Yeah.
Because they're a little easier. And they did the same thing with I think the Curse of Strahd Anniversary Edition. They broke it up into packets.
Here's my thing.
Like they're more digestible and easier to read.
Here's my thing. You don't need to be afraid of a big book. Because you don't need to read the whole book.
I'm very much a proponent of skim. Skim the book at first. Skim a couple of times. No, just flip through the book. You don't have to read everything. Flip through the book. If something grabs your attention, then you can stop to read. But otherwise, just skim. Just look at the art. Look at maybe there's something grabs your attention like grapple. And you're like, ooh, what are the grappling rules? And you skip a couple pages. Magic items. Ooh.
That's a totally different thing. I'm not even talking about skimming. I'm saying even if you don't skim, let's say you read word for word, you don't have to read the whole book if you're a player. Because not all of it is for you. Right? Let's say I'm sitting down to play 5e. I'm a player. I look at the player's handbook. It is 312 pages. Right? You can stop reading at page 165. And if you're not using multiclassing and feats, you can stop reading at page 159. Because you don't need all that. And then on top of that, right? Several of those pages are taken up by races and classes. Oh, well, I know that I'm going to play a dwarf cleric. Ergo, I do not need to read any of the other races or any of the other classes. That drastically reduces the page count of things you need to read. Suddenly, I need to read 150 pages. Actually, I only need to read like 100. I also don't need to.
That's if you picked your race and class. Like, what if you're just like, I have no idea what I want to play?
Well, yeah, if you have no idea, then you'll have to look. But I'm just saying, a lot of people come to the table knowing what they want or having a vague idea of kind of what they're going for. And
a lot
of people will be like, well, I kind of want to play a magic guy and I think I want to be a human. At which point the GM goes, okay, so play a human wizard. A lot of people have at least a notion. Yeah. But even if you don't have a notion, you're still only looking at 159 pages. And a lot of those also, it's a tabletop game. A lot of those pages are taken up with art and tables and side notes and lore bullshit, and you ain't got to read any of that. That's not rules. If you're only worried about learning how to play, you can skip over all that. So people look at a book that's like 600 pages and they're like, holy fuck. And then what they don't realize is 300 of those pages are for the GM and 150 of those pages are monster stat blocks and random tables.
Yeah, that's
so
why
even the GM isn't reading the whole book. You know what I mean? Right? Like,
it's one. I mean, I see what you're saying.
That's a huge thing that a lot of people. They let that stop them without realizing. Oh, a lot of this I don't actually have to read. If I don't want to.
It's true. You don't have to read it, but I think it's still like having 3 smaller books. I do actually prefer, just because it simplifies a lot of things. It tells you exactly what's necessary for you to read in the moment. But it's either easier to transport or easier to store. I just think they're better.
Isaiah.
The only thing I don't like is you have to buy them separately. And nowadays you actually don't even have to do that, because they sell them as bundles that are roughly the same price.
That's what I was just about to say. Definitely. Do you want to spend $180 or do you want to spend $60 once? That's exactly what I was about to say. Because assuming if the books are $60 each, you buy the DMG, the Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, is $160, $180.
Yes,
versus
they are, but
$60 for one book.
I have a strong feeling they probably won't be anymore.
I mean, that's a whole other.
But it
maybe.
Like, yeah, I understand like the book is cheaper, but it's massive. But like, you got to take in like convenience with that as well, you know?
Well, a lot of people also, and I don't agree with this, but a lot of people do put value on a big page count versus the price. Like, people will do calculation of, okay, it's X number of pages, it costs X dollars. How many cents per page is that? And then they'll decide if that means the game is worth it or not. Which
yeah, I mean that's where a lot of people, when the Icewind Dale adventure came out, because it had the most amount of page count of any Wizards of the Coast book, and the adventure itself is kind of so, you know,
exactly.
That's
the problem.
You will.
It's the same stupid fallacy people make with open world games. They're like, oh, it's so much content. And you're like, yeah, but half that content sucks. So why would I don't. Not a fan of that, but people do that. So by putting them all in one book, you could get some people interested in that fashion. I like the idea, the organization thing with the 3 books, like Isaiah, but I'm kind of leaning on the, as long as they don't do the Volo thing, like the full Volo formula, as long as it's like, no, I think
honestly the Pathfinder 2e thing.
It's got to be clear.
First half of the book is Player's Handbook, second half is DMG. There you go.
Yes, exactly. It should be split up in such a fashion that it's clear and obvious. I don't actually think the benefit of the 3 books in terms of like learning and organization is that helpful. Especially because when there's certain things in the DMG that you're like, this should be in the Player's Handbook, and then there's certain things in the Player's Handbook where you're like, I feel like this should be in the DMG. Like, I don't actually think it helps that much when we're talking about learning a game. You know what I mean?
Well, so when it's 5e specifically, I would agree.
Other games have this problem too. That's the thing. They all kind of have this issue.
And there's like, it's never going to be perfect. No. Like there's always going to be things that either should be reiterated or stated in other books.
Yeah.
But there are also things that make sense. If they don't make sense initially, they will make sense down the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'll read the player-only book, and then you'll see some things you're like, what the fuck does that mean? And then you read them from the GM side, you're like, okay. Right.
But if the idea is that the Player's Handbook is the book the players read and the DMG is the book that the Dungeon Master reads, which is not true, but if that's the idea, then there shouldn't be things that only make sense if I come at it from a GM angle. Like, it doesn't, their own business model doesn't totally add up.
I feel like a Dungeon Master should also read the Player Handbook.
No, they should, but I'm saying if the sales pitch is supposed to be, this is the player book and this is the Dungeon Master book, you know what I mean? Like, do.
I mean, yes.
You do have to read both. It's not a real thing, but like, if that's supposed to be the idea.
I was talking about it from a GM perspective, right? Like, you read the player book and you're like, well, I don't, what the fuck is, I don't think of a good one. Like, oh goddamn it. What's like a GM only term?
Nothing. Very little of that. There's very little of that in 5e.
Or was more specifically, what's something that only the GM really has to worry about? That like
monsters, CR calculation,
monsters, locations, setting.
Yeah. I guess like CR calculation, right? Like they don't talk about that. In
homebrewing
the DMG, but you're like, oh well, it keeps talking like the
why is that in the player's handbook?
Huh?
Why is CR calculation in the player's handbook?
It's not.
Pretty sure it is.
Even if it is, right?
I don't believe so. Oh no, you know what? It's for beasts. It's not CR calculations. It's XP for CR, I think, and then it's like because druids have to transform into beasts.
Well,
so here's a bunch of companions.
That's messy too, but yeah, all right, I guess.
That's what I was gonna say. Is right. Like you as the GM, you're like, well, what the fuck is this CR shit for all these animals that the druid can turn into? And then you read the DMG, and you're like, oh, this is assuming that they do what they're supposed to do, not saying that the DMG actually works as it's like. Advertised, but it does what it does. Because the druid will be like, DM, what does I can't transform into creatures that are CR 1/2 or lower?
Yeah, I guess.
And just like,
I just much prefer. I also think there's something to be said about analysis paralysis. If you're trying to get into a game, and let's say you don't have a friend who's helping you at the moment, and you're trying to figure out, okay, so what books do I need to buy to get into the game? And then all of a sudden you realize there's 3 main books, and you're like, wait, what? Which book is the book I actually need? I think there's too many. I don't know. I think the 3-book system, there's more cons than pros. That's just my vibe on it.
Yeah, I mean, I see. I don't necessarily agree, but I see what you're saying.
We'll see. Maybe they'll try with 1D&D. If not,
Yeah, I don't think they will because it's part of the branding. But whatever. To be fair, the analysis paralysis problem also happens when supplements start coming out, but, I don't know what the solution to that would be. And I gotta make supplements. How do you find new systems? What's your primary method?
Talking to you goobers.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that and like YouTube videos, like, watching RuneSmith and him talking about
Does that mean
City of Mists.
Does that mean
it's mostly you guys and recently, because of all the OGL shit, a lot of the YouTuber DMs I subscribe to have been making like top 10 lists or top 25 lists of other tabletops that aren't D&D.
Let me say, I'm very happy that they're doing that. I saw in Nerd Immersion's one of his most recent videos, he had a stack of like 15 books sitting on him next to the desk, and I just looked at it and I was just like, oh, that's hot. I was like, I'm getting a little hard right now.
I forgot.
It was
I think
so
I sent
many
Isaiah
games.
because I sent the one video of.
Bro, I swear it was like 15 books high. I was like, this is amazing.
What's the dude? Oh, the dude, the Gaming Gang YouTube channel. He made 2 separate videos. One is like 20-something fantasy tabletop games,
and then non-fantasy.
And then the other video was like 20 sci-fi or non-fantasy games. I sent the non-fantasy one to Isaiah because I'm like, maybe one of these will help with your cyberpunk game or whatever you want to run next.
I'm so happy. Look, maybe this is bad to say, but there's a part of me that's almost a little bit happy the OGL situation happened. I'm gonna be honest, because a lot of the D&D YouTubers went, "Oh, I shouldn't tie myself to this one game." Wild. But anyway, whatever. That's just me, baby, being selfish because I've been looking for a YouTube channel that covers different games for a while now because the one person I had disappeared because he was a person that I looked to for a lot of different systems for a while. And then, like that's how I found Stars Without Number, for example. That's also how I found Apocalypse World and Dungeon World.
It's so funny because for the longest time, and this is like somewhat LGL, this is OGL topic. The longest time 5e was the Juggernaut. 5e was the
still is,
one Monopoly. And it's funny the fact that the only thing that could take down 5e
is 5e.
Was 5e. Well, not even 5e, sorry. The only thing to take wizards down was themselves. It's literally the bicycle meme of the guy sticking the stick in his own wheel. Like,
look, honestly,
it's kind of like hilarious. Like,
you say that, man,
looking back now,
it's always true. This is the thing, because I remember back in the Dizzy when I played World of Warcraft, it was the same bullshit. People would be like, because there was a period of time where every MMO that came out was a quote unquote WoW killer. Surprise, they weren't WoW killers.
People are like,
no, hold on. I'm watching all these other games and people go, this is the WoW killer, this is the WoW killer. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, you fucking idiots. Nothing is gonna kill WoW except for WoW. Oh, and what happened?
And look what happened.
WoW killed itself.
Yeah. Although one of my buddies is playing Dragonflight, and he's like, it's really good now.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Well. WoW dunked itself into the ground, and then Final Fantasy XIV rose from the ashes. Yeah. WoW killed itself. D&D killed itself. That's always how this shit goes. The only people who are going to take down Apple is Apple fucking up. The only, that's how big companies work. Yeah. That's why I get annoyed when people are like, oh, I can't wait for this D&D killer. It's like, no, you dimrods. Anyway.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I was about to say that because a lot of people are like going about Cobalt Press or MCDM.
Yeah,
or,
it's like, no.
Who's the other company? Now apparently even Ghostfire Gaming, like a bunch of people are like, yeah, we're gonna make our own game, and now the audience are like, yeah, I can't wait for the D&D killer. And it's like, do we really want that?
Well, yes, kind of, sort of. We do want that, actually, yes, sort of, in a sense. Because here's the thing.
Yeah, okay. I think you have to stress in a sense.
In a sense, yes, because D&D killer doesn't actually mean killer. This is the thing.
People just want people want another option. I think that's the biggest thing. People just want another option. There are people who are right now getting ignoring the OGL shit.
No.
People
there are
have
other options.
A 5e fatigue right now, I believe.
Hold on. It's not options, because the options exist. People don't want 5e to have a monopoly. That's the difference. Yeah. And when people say D&D killer, really the phrase is, I want a D&D demonopolizer. But that doesn't roll off the tongue. That's what people mean with WoW too. People aren't saying I want WoW to disappear. They're just saying I want other games to be able to exist in this space. I want there to not be a monopoly. So do we want a D&D killer? Yes, because we don't want D&D to have a monopoly, because monopolies are bad. Do I want D&D to stop existing? No, of course not. Obviously, I'm not going to say that. That's a ridiculous notion.
I didn't even see the Super Bowl, and apparently someone told me that they had a D&D movie trailer.
They did, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the killer phrase is, it just sounds cool to be like the D&D killer, but like really it means like we just want to knock D&D down a peg, which is basically what's happening, which I think is a good thing. But anyway, I will say it's so what I'm hearing is the new system spreader is me among us. Is that?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, you and to a lesser degree, Sam. Yeah.
Well, Sam gets a lot of the system Sam learns about are also from me.
Isaiah, if I ask him about 40K stuff, Sam Cardell.
Yeah. Well.
So Sam and I are. So Sam is the back alley anime dealer. I'm the back alley lore dealer, and fucking Josh is the back alley RPG dealer.
Yeah. So okay.
And then Matt is the back alley wrestling commentator.
Yeah. Right. So, that makes this question kind of funny for me, because now I'm sitting here like, all right, well, my answer's complete. Okay. I kind of put this question down because I had to think about it for myself. And what I realized is I find a lot of my systems through actual plays. That's where I find a lot of them, is listening to new actual plays. It's like a big chunk of it. And then occasionally I'll find some stuff on like Reddit when people will make a post about like, oh, this new system, or, oh, I'm looking for a system that does X, Y, and Z thing. And then somebody suggests it. Like really recently I saw somebody mentioning, oh, I want to play Bloodborne. How would I do it? And somebody mentioned a game called Trophy Gold, or Trophy Hunter Gold, and another one that was In the Pale Moonlight, I think it was called. And like the cover for In the Pale Moonlight, it literally looks like it's from Bloodborne.
I think I've heard of In the Pale Moonlight.
They use in Bloodborne.
Is it? So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think I've heard about that game recently.
That's another way that I'll find stuff. But yeah, a big one for me is actual plays.
Yeah, they may as well have called it Grant Us Eyes. Like.
Yeah. Right. Just call it the Beast Blood. All right. Well, that was a quicker. I didn't expect that one to go by so quick. All right. And yeah, kind of my last one is like, what do you? So, what's I don't know. What do you look for when you look into a new game? Like, what do you want out of a new game?
I mean, I think that the simplest answer is you want it to match the thing that you're interested in at the moment, right? Like you want it to work. And if it doesn't work exactly, you want it to be malleable enough to make it work.
Right. Like the media thing, like you watch Cyberpunk, so you're like, I want to do that. You know, the Leonardo da Vinci point at the TV, like, ooh, that. I want to do that. But with dice.
With dice. I mean, is that you just looking for it to emulate a vibe? You're not looking for anything specific out of it?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, if it has an interesting or cool mechanic that goes with it, that's awesome, but it's not really the thing that I look for. I just want it to, like, fit the vibe. Yeah, it's basically, I want it to play it, and if it's based on, like, a media thing that I've been interested in recently, I want it to feel like that. You know, so if you know, I'm on this weird Kamen Rider binge, I want people to, like, get the transforming magic item and, like, fight the bad guy and do the special moves, you know?
Yes, also, sorry, I mischaracterized. The game's called When the Moon Hangs Low.
Oh. Because I heard that be used for tabletop recently.
Oh, yeah, that's
Bloodborne no, okay, never mind.
Right? Isn't that Bloodborne as fuck looking?
Okay, yeah. This is the thing I was thinking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, When the Moon Hangs Low. Matt, are you on the same vibe besides that?
Yeah, same thing. Like, you know, I watch Cyberpunk Red and I want to do that.
Myself.
Yeah, or, you know, the post-apocalyptic thing. Like, yeah, I want to do Borderlands, but I feel like most of my games that I run, like you guys, you know, played like games with me as a DM, 90% of the time my games have some sort of like comical twist to them. I can't run serious games. I can't be a serious player. So as long as I can kind of do that in a game, like there are certain games like probably like when I played in a little bit of the Call of Cthulhu, like it was kind of tough for me. I'm not gonna lie, but you know, I'd throw in a joke here or there just to kind of break the tension of how serious shit was. Something like the you know, When the Moon Rises, like hangs low. I don't know.
Real shit. I don't know if I could have a good time playing Call of Cthulhu. I probably could, but like playing the game knowing your character's gonna get like just gonna lose their mind or die terribly, I find that like hard to fuck, what's the phrase I'm looking for? To commit myself to the character, you know?
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
you gotta...
I have the same problem with something like, you know, 40k Dark Heresy. Like, I know my guardsman's gonna get mulched by a Tormagon. Like, it's kind of why I'm like, I'm just gonna, like, I'll make 12 different characters and they'll just be like, oh yeah, this is like, you know,
Jason number 1.
Yeah, this is like you fucking I can't think of a fucking name. You know, Steve McSteverson, the fucking the Cadian guardsman, you know, like
yeah. I don't know.
Like I'm fine with a character. Like
I would have to think about what I'd want to do with Call of Cthulhu, because yeah, it is true that you're sort of pre-set up to lose in some fashion, because that is the point of the genre.
Yeah, well, here's the thing though, right? Is like it's not like losing the character that's the problem, because I actively wanted to lose Grant in Blades in the Dark, right? But it would have felt like a culmination to something really big, rather than oh well, your character just got I just got a really lucky. Oh, you just exploded.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just dead. Yeah, you're just dead.
I don't know if Call of Cthulhu quite is like that necessarily, because I think it generally does take quite a while for your character to eventually be off the table. Because I think usually, to my understanding, I haven't played Call of Cthulhu, so I could be wrong about this, but my understanding was that what happens is your character slowly like loses their mind or slowly gets a sickness. Like it does take a while. It's not just like random beastie slaps you once and you just die at random. The only time, as far as I'm aware, the only time that happens is if you're kind of playing it like it's D&D and trying to run in headlong like an idiot.
Well, so I've read some like green text stories about, which I know it's not the most accurate, about Call of Cthulhu, and it often is like, yes, the monster broke in and then a fight started, and then the detective got his head ripped off. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it? He just... Oh.
I think it's the kind of thing where you really gotta, like, pick your battles. And I think a lot of those situations tend to be players not being smart, or, like, GM not getting the system, or, like, throwing something that they should... You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to go, to my understanding.
Maybe. And you know, I was literally thinking about this with Cyberpunk Red, right? But the thing for me is, Cyberpunk as a genre, basically, it is like it's an explicit idea that your characters are gonna die quick, fast, and violently, but they're gonna go out in a blaze of glory every single time. Yep. Or they're supposed to, right? Like that's the whole thing with being an edge runner, is that you're supposed to go out like a boss. And because shit gets so hyper violent in Cyberpunk, that like, you know, it's never just a shootout with the police, right? You can take care of NCPD pretty easy, but then it's like, oh, when now Max Tech showed up, and everyone's like, oh fuck.
Yep. They don't give a fuck.
And then if you die fighting, Max Tech, then fuck yeah, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then Scott Brown Insurance Agency shows up and just kills everybody.
Yeah.
I think Call of Cthulhu, like, I think the Lovecraftian stuff is supposed to kind of go that way, although not, rather than like a violent blaze of glory. I think the idea is you're supposed to go out like unveiling some great horrible secret or something, or like learning some ancient, you know, like I think you are supposed to kind of go out with something crazy happening. Mm-hmm. The problem is it just doesn't always seem to hit that way.
You know what's weird is that in Lovecraft stories, the main character doesn't always go out losing their mind or dying. Like, that happens sometimes, but not all the time by any means.
No, I think it's just that's just the kind of vibe people latched onto. That's just strange. That's just the part people were into. Yes, I don't know. Yeah, because like that's basically the end of every Lovecraftian themed video game for sure.
It's the end of most fucking Warhammer stories for sure. I actually unfortunately know how Devastation of Baal ends, but not really how it ends. That's the cool part. It's how it gets there. So I'm like, fuck yeah.
But, and then the Horus Heresy.
No, see, the Horus Heresy was 10,000 years in the past. The Devastation of Baal is in the 42nd century.
Don't. We're not doing this right now.
No, because it's after Rob Gilman comes back from the grave. So.
Yes, Robert Gutman.
Yeah.
All right. So I had an idea, but now I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to do the idea I had, and now I'm wondering if I just want to take questions from Matt. Like, you know, because Matt, you had a slightly different impression on what we were going for initially. So I don't know, like, I guess, do you have any, I don't know, questions or ideas or things that bug you that you want to like ask for assistance on?
I mean,
I know I'm putting you on the spot a little here.
I mean, some of the stuff you did kind of like answer where it's like me and Isaiah were like, well, where do you start when you like go to read a new game? And we went to character creation. We're like, no, you know.
No, I'm not saying don't do that.
Right. Oh,
no. What I was saying before, Matt's referring to a conversation we had before we started recording, for those listening.
Well, no, I mean, like in the pod when you said like you look at XP. And like rewards. I guess if you were like, you know, you don't know the person, if someone came up to you and be like, hey, I'm interested in getting into a tabletop game, what should I do first? Like, what would be your answer? If they're going to
be a player?
If they're going to be, you know, let's say both. Let's say like one's a player, one's a DM.
If you're assuming they're a noob in both cases?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a GM, I do think just jump to the GMing section and see what the game tells you to do. Because if you're coming at it new, you don't have any preconceived notions. So step one is even understanding what, and really, step one is not even understanding what the game wants you to do. Step one is understanding what the hobby as a whole wants you to do. You know what I mean? Like, you might not even understand the idea, if you're starting from totally zero, you might not even understand the idea that you're supposed to run the monsters, for example. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you might, like, us players take that for granted. Like, yeah, of course the GM runs the bad guys. You might not know that. So, yeah, if you're a totally new GM starting from zero, find whatever game that got you interested, whether that be D&D or Cyberpunk or Shadowrun. But if it's Shadowrun, pick another game.
Or even the fish one?
Or Fishblade. Just don't play Shadowrun ever. But, like, read the GMing section and see what the game tells you to do. Because, you know, that really is step one, is even understanding what your fucking job is in a lot of ways. Especially because as a player, you don't need to understand your job really, because the GM will just kind of tell you what your job is. You play a lot of the time, especially if you're the kind of player who only agreed to play if because there's certain players who are like, yeah, I'll play, but I don't want to read the rules. At which point the GM goes, okay, fine, I'll just tell you what to do. I don't accept that, but I know a lot of people do. So yeah, like, you know, understand what the game wants from you. And then also I would say to the GM, probably look at whatever thing the game values the most, whatever thing you're going to be doing the most, start looking at those rules. So if you're a new GM, you're running 5e, read the DMG stuff, although the DMG is a big ask because it's a whole ass book as opposed to just a section, but no, go through that. And then I would say look at the combat rules, because that's what the game cares about the most.
It's weird because at least with 5e, anytime like someone's getting into it, I always say read the player's handbook, because it's weird. The player's handbook has the rules of the game, most of the game in it, stuff that the DM needs, and that's not in the fucking DMG.
Yeah, so here's the thing.
It's so weird.
Here's the thing.
Like maybe other games, like they have the opposite issue, where it's like running the game and the rules of the game aren't in two separate like places.
No.
But a lot of the stuff like that DMs need to know, if they just went to the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5e, they'd be fucking lost, because it's like the DMG specifically expects you to have looked at the player handbook.
Well, so see, I think you're bringing in your own assumptions a little bit here, Matt, because again, if we're assuming the player is, and no, other games this is still a thing, right? Other games, it's a little different, because if it's in one book, then you're only talking about chapters of the book as opposed to a whole different product, like a whole other book. But no, the reason I say don't do that is because if we're assuming a person is totally new and has never played and has no preconceived notions, I'm saying you need to look at the GM section, because if you want a GM, you need to know what the game even wants you to do before you can even worry about the rules. You know
Wouldn't that stuff be in the player section?
No, because the player's handbook is going to tell you this is the rules and this is how you play. But the player's handbook does not tell you, GM, this is what we want you to do. You know, the player's handbook doesn't say, GM, you need to make plot hooks. GM, you need to make dungeons. GM, you need to come up with encounters. None of that information is in the player's handbook. And if you're starting at zero, if you have no information, you need to know all that stuff before you can even grasp what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
right. But
you're coming in totally blind. Rules are not what matter at the very jump. Just having understanding of how the flow of the game works should be your priority from the jump. And then you get into the rules after. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm kind of waffling on it, because there are certain things where it's like, you know, the DM, it's like, all right, DM, this is how to make an encounter. Oh boy, what's an encounter?
Well, that's the DMG should tell you what an encounter is.
Well, no, because that's directed in the fucking player handbook.
Right. Well, that's a little bit of the issue, yes. But ideally, the GM section should sort of inform you about that. The way you can mitigate that problem is going through the DMG section, and then every time you have a question, jot it down, go to that later. You know, be like, all right.
What were you gonna say, Isaiah? Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, for me, I kind of go back to what I was saying before, where a lot of it becomes contextual. I prefer to read the game first, let it tell me like what it needs to say, and then when I'm reading the DM section, I won't have those questions. I'll have the context to go, oh, I see what this is about now. It like
see, but okay.
I feel like I feel like the rules around it sort of give you they're the tools by which you as the GM put things together. So I feel like you need to know what your tools are before you know what your project is.
Right, that's okay.
Yes and no. See, here's the thing. You guys both came into the hobby after watching an actual play, and so you kind of knew what a GM does. I came in with no information. I didn't even really know what a GM did other than cultural assumptions. Like, I just made a lot of assumptions and guesses. And there were things that were my job that I didn't realize were my job when I started playing, when I started running 4E. So, like, that's a lot of it. If you have... Okay. Let me put it this way. If you're coming into the game because you watch Critical Role and you want to run the game because Critical Role cool, then I will say yes, start with like the combat section of the game. Absolutely. If you're coming from the game because some friend told you about it and you don't know anything about it and you want to run because you have kind of an idea that like your friend sort of told you that the GM is the person who runs the show and you're like, oh, I want to do that. That's what I'm saying. Read the GM section. Because you need to get a grasp on what that even really means. You know what I mean? So, yeah, well, so it depends. It does change a little bit depending on how you're coming into things. Because if you're coming in from an actual play, then you've literally watched what the GM is supposed to do, so you do have that information.
Well, I sort of see it as this way, right? Like,
again, you got to keep in mind, completely zero baseline, right? Like, no information. That's what we're talking about.
Sure, but like, so for me, when I read through Never Knows Best, which I still really want to fucking play.
Oh my god, I forgot about that game. Fuck.
I know.
Sorry, I feel that was another one I was supposed to try and read. Fuck.
It's when I read through that, I was like, okay, like all this stuff is really interesting. The way that they talk about your like the stress mechanic and stuff like your room. And all the other shit that goes into like what makes something feel like it's from Fooly Cooley. And then the you know, I like struggle to think of it as even like GM instructions with a part with like a PBTA game. It's more of like a here's the goal, here's the outset, and sort of how you get there, you know?
No. I think actually Power by the Apocalypse games are very firm on their GM instructions, actually.
We have to reread that again.
Well, yeah,
I don't know. When I read them,
it's easy to misunderstand for sure. But
yeah, either when I read the GM side stuff, I went, oh, this would all be stuff that I would be like cross-referencing and jumping back and forth in the book for, which I complain about doing that shit enough with shit like spells, and I'm just like, no, it's so annoying. I hate doing it because I feel like I don't have a complete picture. Whereas if you read it, like when you front to back it, it just sort of, for me at least, the picture feels more complete when I get to the most complex stuff in the game, which is the GM section.
Again, but see, you're still coming at it from having already played a tabletop game previously. That example.
I mean, yes, but considering that Powered by the Apocalypse is a completely different design philosophy,
but it still does
matter a bit. Kind of, but like it still does matter.
See, that's my whole point. When the hypothetical question Matt's asking is, I have not played any tabletop anything, right? That's what my whole initial point about, even when you do read a new game, regardless of how different the system is, you're not starting from zero because you have a grasp on how the hobby works, no matter what. That's what I'm saying is like you can't bring in those assumptions when you're talking about somebody who's never done anything. You know,
I feel like what I'm talking about is it's relatively safe to say that people would like learning with gaps in the information can be frustrating. I think it's a pretty easy universal to follow.
See, but you're not. See, that's the thing that you're not learning with gaps information. You're learning about a specific subset of the game. It might occasionally mention like a mechanic or something, although honestly a lot of DM sections don't necessarily, but it does. It also depends on how they're written, but it's this is one of those, it's a complicated thing with teaching. To bring it over into another zone, I've heard many stories of people who tried to get like their significant other or something to play a video game, right? And the video game says, push the square button. The person who's never played a video game goes, what the fuck is the square button? They don't know. They have no notion of anything. You know what I mean? The video game says click in L3. They look at the controller. There's nothing on that controller that's even labeled L3. And then you, as someone who's played video games, goes, oh, well, it's the left stick. And they're like, how the fuck would I know that? And it's like, oh, I don't know how you know that. I figured it out at some point, but I don't know how. I just know I did. You know what I mean? That's the kind of shit we're talking about. Like, you might feel, you who has played tabletop games, you're going to come into it and go, all right, so I know what the GM's job is generally. I want to look at like the primary mechanics of the game. But if you don't even know what the general guidelines of the GM's job is, you got to know that first. And some games do put that stuff a little more up front, in which case, I guess read the upfront bit. But generally, that stuff should be more in the GM section of things.
I don't know. This seems like a difference of perspective on the thing. You know, like I feel like there's no particularly correct way of doing it. I think it very much depends on the person. You know?
I mean, no, there's not a correct way. What I'm saying is, like, if you're gonna decide you're gonna run a game and you start reading through the player's handbook or whatever, the player's handbook is like, and then the player makes an attack against the monster's AC, and then you go, well, wait, monster, what are we talking about? Monsters? Where are the monsters coming from? You know, because you don't know how GMing works. You don't know that you run the monsters. And then you might go, is the player controlling the monster? Is there like a board game or something that involves monsters? Like, you don't even like that most basic of information might not be clear to you.
It might not be, but it's one of those things where...
In fact, I would say it's probably not going to be clear to you. This is the thing. You can't assume any of that information is clear.
No, you can't assume it, but you can gain it through context pretty easily.
Yeah, see, no, that's what I'm saying. You're... I don't want to say you're giving people too much credit, but you're assuming people are going to make correct assumptions along the way, and a lot of time they don't.
Well, let's put it this way. Even if they don't, they'll come to the conclusion eventually. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong with your initial assumptions, right? Like,
no, there isn't, but I'm still going to say, but my point is still, if you're asking me which section should I read first, I have zero fucking clue what I'm doing, but I want a GM. I'm still going to say, all right, we'll start with reading the GM section and see what that game tells you to do, or what the game asks of you or expects of you.
I don't know.
Expects is better.
Well, how about this? How about this for an analogy? If you, like, this is your first time working at a job, right? It's your first job you've ever gotten. You're not going to be started off as a manager, right? You're going to start from the lowest possible rung and then work your way up. I sort of see it like that. There's a lot more responsibility that's involved with GMing that you just don't have to deal with as a player. And until you have a good grasp on what that stuff is, I feel like it's easier, or it'll be harder for you to immediately grasp what makes GMing so important. Not to say that you can't do it, but you'll probably have a harder time, I think.
I think you're making a false equivalency there, because, yeah, no, you're not expected to do the manager's job, but the first thing that will happen when you start a new job will be the manager will explain to you, these are your responsibilities, these are what is expected of you. And that's what a GM section should do. Or at least a portion of the GM section. Really, it should be kind of split into two, sort of what's expected of you, how do you do it, but you come into the new job, the manager says, these are the things you're expected to do. I don't expect you to clean the toilets. I do expect you to run the register, right? The GM chapter says, I don't expect you to control the players. I do expect you to control the monsters. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And yes, you are taking on more responsibility from the jump as a GM, but we're assuming that this person has already decided that that's the responsibility they want to take on.
Sure, they might want to take it on, but they won't have a baseline from the get-go if you don't sort of familiarize yourself with the rules from the lowest possible point. I think you should probably try to build a foundation which would be in this instance from a player's perspective, and then build it up to a GM's perspective because of the increase in things like responsibility and necessity from remembering rules and stuff like that.
I mean, no, I don't think the baseline is going to be rules. That's what I mean. Rules are not the baseline. Like, purely grasping what do you even do when you play this is the baseline. Like, that is the most fundamental baseline. Rules are step 2, really, or 3. You know, it's like, if you don't understand that pushing buttons on the controller makes things happen in the video game, you can't play the video game. You have to understand buttons cause interactions, and I am intended to control.
True enough, and to be fair, you'll probably find that in the prologue or the foreword, or
sometimes
you'll probably find that at the beginning of the book.
Sometimes that will be in the beginning. Sometimes that gets into book organization. Yeah, I'm sort of assuming that information should be in the dungeon mastering section and the GMing section. It's not always. That's kind of a different problem. Yeah, I guess try and find that information, and if it's not in the game mastering section, then try and find where it is. But I'm hoping it's in the game mastering section most of the time, or I'm hoping it's said. Really, it probably should be said in both places. It should be said
correct in
the beginning of the player section and in the beginning of the game mastering section. So be sort of reiterated is probably the ideal scenario, but that doesn't always happen. Well, shit, it's been 2 hours. Matt, I'm sure that took way longer than you were planning.
Yeah, I mean, I did learn a lot though. So that's good. I feel a little more confident now on.
I don't feel like I explained shit, but all right, that's good. I mean, I mean, whatever. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no gun to my head. You got any other questions? Fuck it.
No, I'm pretty good. Maybe this weekend I'll go read some. Ooh, Ruby. Maybe I'll go read some Cyberpunk stuff. Weekend. I beat the game. Finally beat 2077 after God knows how long.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, all right, maybe now I fix that Cyberpunk Jones I've got. I've been fucking listening to music at work all the time. I'm like, all right, maybe now I'll read the game. If I like actually sit down to like read it instead of just like skimming it and like reading a line or two and then fucking flipping the pages.
Although that game
and then
is
being like, God,
rough.
this layout's terrible.
Yeah, that game's a bit rough to read. The layout is all over the place. Sheesh. Have you looked at that game, Isaiah? Have you looked at the layout for that book?
Not yet.
It's chaos.
I've been actively trying to not because I know I'm going to want to run it.
Yeah.
I'm still, I got to finish my game first.
I understand that struggle for sure.
And I honestly, we're on a hiatus right now because I just got a lot of shit going on. So now I have to occupy myself in the meanwhile. But I still can't meet these fucking rules.
Man, I'm trying to... I don't want to drag us on much longer, but I did kind of want to bring up my sort of mechanical comparison point.
I mean, do we want to do a 2-parter?
No, it's not enough for that. I had a bunch of examples too. Is the thing that's the thing that's frustrating me. I had a bunch of examples from different games and how I could tie them back to 5e, but I can't shut the fuck up fast enough to get to my damn point. Okay. I'll try. I guess I'll pick one of these.
I would say pick one.
I'll pick one and try and summarize what I'm kind of getting at here. So the last sort of point I'm going to make, and this was going to be a longer segment, but anytime you're reading a new game, a really good way, you might come across a rule and say, I don't understand what this rule is trying to say. I've read this paragraph 3 times. I don't get what it wants from me. I don't get how this mechanic works. A really good trick is to take the mechanic of the game you're currently reading and compare it or translate it to a game you already understand. So if you're playing 5e or you've played 5e, you understand 5e, you're like, that game I got down pat. I know the rules, no problem, front and back. And then you go, for whatever reason, you're like, cool, we're going to play Blades in the Dark next. And you're reading through Blades in the Dark, and the primary resolution mechanic in Blades in the Dark is called action rolls. And now you start reading through the section on action rolls, and you say to yourself, you're like, I don't get what this means, but I can tell this is like an important mechanic, right? A way that you can really, the way that you can break it down to understand it is trying to compare what it's similar to in the game you already know. So in the case of an action roll, you're going to look at it and go, all right, well, I know these action rolls are basically the same as a skill check in D&D. So I can understand that part. When I need to overcome something, I roll a skill check. When I need to overcome something in Blades, I roll an action roll. So, I need to, let me pull up real quick. Blades character sheet. I can correct verbiage. Here we go. Okay, I need to, let's say I need to climb up the wall of this nearby building so we can sneak into the roof. All right, GM says you're going to make a prowl roll. All right, that's roughly equivalent to the GM saying make a stealth check. Prowl, action roll, stealth check. Basically the same idea. You're sneaking and you're climbing up the wall. You're doing your roguish shit, right? Cool. There's a couple of other parts to an action roll in Blades, though. So the other part to an action roll is the position. And the position, you have 3 positions, which is, let me find it real quick. Controlled, risky, and desperate. I don't know if you have a good comparison for this one, Isaiah. I will say position's a little hard to describe, but the essential part of the point of the mechanic is what kind of situation you're in and how likely you are to succeed. I guess you could kind of compare it to the DC. So if you're in a desperate situation, you could kind of, in a lot of ways, you could think about it as a higher DC, sort of. Not in the sense that the check is harder to make, because action rolls are always the same level of difficulty to overcome. You always only need, in your pool of D6s, you only ever need 1 success in Blades for it to be a successful roll. But the position determines like the outcome afterward, essentially. So if you're in a desperate position, it means you're really in trouble, and if you fail, something really bad is going to happen. So you could kind of think of it as like failing a DC 20 check potentially means that the outcome is going to be worse than failing like a DC 10 check, right? The stakes are higher. Then the other part of the action roll you have is your effect. And this one's kind of a weird comparison, but an effect is kind of like the damage die roll in a way. It's literally how effective the resolution of your check is gonna be. If you have great effect, and if you're fighting someone, it could mean you're doing extra damage. If you have great effect and you're doing the wall climbing scenario, having a great effect means, you climb up the wall so fast and so quietly, nobody notices, you don't make a single sound, you're on the roof, you got all the time in the world to do whatever you want. That would be like a great effect. Whereas if you had like, what are the 3 positions? It's risk, it's
desperate, risky,
no,
safe.
That's the positions. The effects, I'm trying to remember what the effects are. Can't remember what the effects are, but it's like great effect, normal effect, or it's a great effect, standard effect, and limited effect. If you have a limited effect in the climbing up the wall scenario, it means, cool, you pass, you climb up the wall. However, 4 guards spotted you while you were climbing up the wall and are now coming after you. You've got a few minutes to figure out what you want to do. That would be like a limited effect. Like you get what you want, but you got some problems. Or you get up the wall halfway and then the guards notice you and throw a grappling hook on you and they're pulling you down. That would also be a limited effect where like you don't get all the way up there. So that's what I mean, where it's like kind of a damage die roll. It's that one's a little harder to compare, but it's kind of like using that, like, oh, it's sort of like this is how you can help to rationalize it in your brain. And then the last part of an action roll is just bonus dice, and that's just modifiers. Extra dice and blades, +1 in D&D. Same idea, right? The more dice you have in your dice pool for blades, the more likely you are to succeed. Once you pass your check, it's essentially same idea as D&D. The GM will kind of tell you what the deal is. That's the point I want to make there. Yeah, that's the main thing. So using that kind of like, I understand this, how do I go to this? I understand that, how do I rationalize it with that? I think that's a really good way to learn a new system. Actually, I'll do one other example. Matt, when you're reading through Cyberpunk Red and the book mentions stopping power, right? You know about that?
No.
So stopping power is how much damage your armor soaks up. So if the enemy hits you for 10 damage and your armor has a stopping power of 8, you only take 2 damage.
Oh, okay.
I'll throw the question at you.
Quick. I had a moment where I was like, "Do you know what stopping power is?" And I was gonna go on a rant about the actual term for stopping power.
Oh.
And I was like, he's probably talking about mechanics. But
Matt, if I say that, like, if I give you that comparison, what do you think that's something in D&D that you could potentially compare that to rationalize it?
I'm assuming that's like old AC, like FACO or some shit.
No.
No.
It's damage soaking. So the enemy does,
I guess,
10,
like temp HP.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like temp
more
HP.
Like damage reduction.
It's damage reduction, but because D&D doesn't do damage reduction a lot, temp HP is a good way to think about it, because it's a similar idea where it's ablative, right? Like, I have 10 temp HP, the enemy does 8 damage to me, now I have 2 temp HP left over, right? Like, that's the leftover part. Stopping power, it's not exactly the same, but the idea is my armor has 8 stopping power, the enemy does 10 damage, the difference is 2, I take 2 damage. So yes, temp HP is kind of the other way you could think about it is kind of like how the what's that feat called, Armor Master or whatever?
Heavy Armor Master, the one that gives you the free
Heavy Armor Master, subtract 3 damage from the initial hit, right?
Right.
Another way you could rationalize it. So, yeah, I had more examples, but I'm not going to go down all of them. But that's kind of what I was getting at. That's the main idea is being like, I understand this game. I'm learning this game. How can I compare the two to connect them? So, yeah, basically do that when you can, like when you're reading a new game, because what you'll realize is as you read more games, you'll be like, oh, this is just this mechanic. Oh, this is just that mechanic. Oh, this is this. Oh, I understand this. Okay, this isn't bad. For example, when I was reading through Cyberpunk and I saw the part about stopping power, my immediate response was, oh, this is Soak from Star Wars. Star Wars has a very similar mechanic, basically an almost identical mechanic. Okay, this is Soak. Right? And I didn't even have to think about it after that. I read it and went, oh, this is like that thing, and then I was good. I understood the mechanic immediately. Yeah. That's my kernel of it. That's my number one advice, I guess, is think about ways to compare the two and use, similarities to understand new games. And the best part about that trick is it gets easier and easier with every subsequent game, because you learn and understand more mechanics, and then you can compare and understand more mechanics. Okay. How about them Yankees, though?
Right.
So you want to talk about Shadowrun for another half hour? Or?
No, I'm good, bud.
Are you sure?
Nah, I'm good, bud.
You want to learn about how dragons work in Shadowrun? Dragons are really cool. They run mega corporations. They're basically giant dickhead CEOs.
All I gotta say to that is a hashtag break corpo shit. Am I right, Matt?
Yes, correct. Also, I think a dragon is the president of Germany in Shadowrun.
Fitting.
I'm pretty sure. And he runs a company called Saterkrupp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, if you like the shit show chaos you heard, I forgot to do this at the beginning. God damn it. If you like the shit show chaos you've heard, hit follow or subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to. If said platform gives you the option to leave a rating, leave a little rating. If you have any good tips or tricks, maybe also leave a comment about, how you try to learn a new system. Also, I've mentioned this before. This will probably be the last time I'll say this. Spotify, you can leave comments now. So if you're on Spotify, leave a comment. And then, of course, if you want to keep up to date, zoom over to the Angry Bluebird app known as Twitter. Hit follow. That's where we tweet out new episodes. And occasionally I tweet out random nonsense sometimes just for funsies. Also, if something's episodes late or whatever, that's another place you can find it. Yeah. That's all I got.
All right, bud.
Who you all right? All right, me? What?
Yeah, motherfucker.
All right, now that those two are gone, we're going to talk more about Shadowrun.